The grand ballroom of E's Manor gleamed under a cascade of crystal chandeliers. White roses spilled from gilded urns, and silk drapes whispered with the hum of an applauding crowd. Amaka Ease, in a dress of ivory lace, felt her pulse quicken as she approached the raised dais where Chuma Ease stood in a midnight blue tuxedo. Guests held their breath as he took her hand, and then nothing. No tender smile, no murmur of love. His dark eyes met hers only in silence, lips sealed as if bound by iron. A ripple of confusion passed through the room. Chuma! Amaka's voice trembled, half lost beneath the hush. She felt the weight of 100 expectant gazes. He inclined his head ever so slightly but did not speak. The orchestra, sensing the breach of custom, faltered mid-note. Bride and groom were meant to share vows, yet Chuma's vow was mute. In that moment, every candle's flame flickered, as though the manor itself recoiled from his silence. The officiant cleared his throat. If either of you knows any reason why they should not be joined in matrimony, his voice trailed into the void between Amaka and Chuma. A single tear traced Amaka's cheek. She stepped forward. I do, she whispered, though her conviction quivered. Chuma's jaw clenched. His gaze darted to the stained glass window where moonlight painted fractured patterns on the marble floor. He raised one hand, slowly, deliberately, and, in a motion that froze Amaka's blood, withdrew a small black box from his pocket. A diamond ring shimmered in the chandelier's glow, but he did not speak the words every bride waits to hear. He slid it onto her finger in silence, then stepped back, expression unreadable. The guests erupted in forced applause. Amaka managed a shaky smile, retreating beside her father. Her heart thundered with unanswered questions. As they danced the slow waltz, Chuma remained distant, his every movement polite but mechanical. Her fingertips brushed his shoulder. An electric shock shot through her. Yet his eyes remained locked on the polished dance floor, as if he feared finding answers there. When the music ended, Amaka slipped away to the terrace. Cool night air kissed her cheeks as she pressed her palm against the rim of the fountain. Somewhere inside the manor, Chuma's silent vow pulsed like a secret heartbeat. She vowed, in return, to uncover its meaning, even if it meant unraveling the man she'd just married. By dawn, the banquet tables lay bare of flowers and crystal. Amaka wandered the echoing corridors of E's Manor, the hush swallowing her footsteps. Portraits of ancestors glared from their frames. Marble statuettes caught the weak light filtering through arched windows. The silence followed her like a living thing. "Good morning, madam," murmured Amaka, the house steward, rounding a corner. He bowed slightly, eyes sympathetic. "Breakfast is in the solarium." Amaka nodded absently and continued on, her mind replaying last night's tableau. At the end of a long hallway, she paused before a pair of massive oak doors. They stood ajar, revealing a private sitting room she'd never entered. Inside, dust motes danced in the shaft of morning light. On a mahogany table sat a music box, its surface tarnished, inlaid with mother-of-pearl flowers. Intrigued, Amaka lifted the lid. A soft, tinny melody began to play, a lullaby she hadn't heard since childhood. The sound stirred memories of a childhood home long abandoned. Amaka exhaled and pressed her palm against the box's floral inlay. The tune skipped once, then continued. She closed her eyes. Why was Chuma's sister's music box here? She had no sister, only stories of the little girl who died before her time. A door clicked behind her. She spun around to find Obinna Okoye, Chuma's CFO, standing in the threshold. His tailored suit fit him like armor. "I wouldn't disturb that," he said, voice low. "Some things are better left forgotten." His eyes, dark and calculating, met hers. Then he turned and vanished down the hall, leaving Amaka clutching the music box. She sank onto a velvet chaise, the cradle of the melody haunting her. Each note felt like a question, Who is the sister? What promise bound Chuma to this silence? And why did Obina want her to stop asking? As the last tinny chord faded, Amaka whispered to the empty room, "I'm only getting started." The afternoon sun burned through the stained glass windows of Amaka's childhood home. Mama Udoka sat in her favorite wicker chair, a steaming cup of zobo tea in hand. The familiar aroma of hibiscus and ginger brought Amaka a stab of comfort and dread. "Mama," Amaka began, voice steady but soft, "there's something wrong." She recounted the wedding night, Chuma's silence, the music box, Obina's warning. Mama Udoka's dark eyes narrowed. She set down her cup. "Some promises," she said, voice low and tremulous, "are darker than death." Amaka bristled. "What are you talking about?" she demanded. Mama leaned forward, weathered hands twisting a prayer cloth. "Your husband's family is bound by an oath older than you know. Chekuma's sister, Ifinanya, died in ways no one speaks of. Before she passed, she extracted a vow from each child born of the Ease line, to keep her memory alive no matter the cost." Amaka's jaw dropped. An oath? To what end? Mama's gaze turned inward, as if recalling a terrible night. To protect the Ease legacy. But protection often demands sacrifice. "I warned you, child. A heart locked by guilt and duty makes no room for love." Tears welled in Amaka's eyes. "So this silence, it's punishment." Mama shook her head. "Not punishment, a covenant. He believes silence honors her spirit. And woe to any who try to free him from that promise." She reached out, squeezing Amaka's hand. "Listen to your heart, my daughter. A vow made in darkness can only be broken by light." Amaka left her mother's porch with a tempest inside her. As boughs of bougainvillea draped over the gate, she made a decision. She would shine a light on Chuma's past, even if it meant burning down every secret in the process. By late afternoon, the sleek glass towers of Ease Technologies loomed over the financial district. Inside the boardroom, mahogany walls and leather chairs spoke of power. Chuma sat at the head of the table, flanked by investors and executives. Obina stood to one side, laptop open. Chuma cleared his throat, voice even but distant. "Quarterly profits are up 12%, thanks to our new AI platform." Polite applause flickered around the room. Obina clicked to the next slide, a series of red-inked numbers. "If we don't secure the Lagos Abuja contract by month's end, those profits evaporate, and our overseas investors won't wait." An older board member scoffed. "We've always closed these deals. Why the panic?" Obina met Chuma's gaze. "Because the competition has deeper pockets. We can't outbid them without bringing on more partners, and that means relinquishing control you vowed never to give." He paused, voice sharpening. "Amaka's family is offering more capital than we dare refuse." Chuma's fist tightened on the table. "We agreed, no family money." Obina leaned forward. "She has demands, Chuma. Her mother's involvement, strings attached." The air crackled. Investors shifted uncomfortably. Chuma's jaw worked. "Finally," he said, "set up a meeting." Discreetly. As the meeting adjourned, Obina lingered. "You need to loosen that vow, boss, or risk watching your empire crumble." He placed a hand on Chuma's shoulder. Too intimate, too knowing. Chuma gave no answer. Instead, he stared at the wood grain of the table, as if searching for a pathway out of silence. In the corridor, Chuma's assistant handed him a file stamped confidential. Inside lay photos. Chuma's sister on her deathbed, a dark-haired girl with pleading eyes, and beneath them a single note, "Never speak of me again." That evening, Amaka returned to the manor with purpose. She slipped through the wide doors and headed for Chuma's study, a room lined with books on theology and corporate law. The scent of old leather and sandalwood greeted her. On his desk lay scattered documents, but her eyes were drawn to a small envelope, handwritten in Chuma's precise script. For Amaka! Her fingers trembled as she broke the seal. Inside was a torn photograph, edges jagged, showing a young woman cradling a baby. Beneath the image, someone had scrawled a date, April 12, 1998. Amaka recognized the baby's features, her own. Her breath caught. Footsteps approached. Chuma stood in the doorway, arms crossed. I see you found it. His voice was softer than she'd ever heard. She clutched the photograph. What is this? He stepped forward, guilt and sorrow warring in his eyes. That's my sister, Ifyananya, and our nephew on the day she died. Amaka swallowed. Your nephew? Then, Chuma closed the distance. You were born the day she died. She begged me to protect you with her silence. Amaka's world shifted. You blamed me for her death? His eyes glistened. Not blamed. Bound. I promised her I'd never speak, never love again, until justice was done. He paused, voice breaking. I don't even know what justice looks like. Silence stretched between them. Then Amaka stepped close, placing the torn photograph against her heart. Maybe justice is finding your voice again. Her words trembled on the verge of hope. Chuma reached out, fingertips brushing hers. As the grandfather clock chimed midnight, they stood surrounded by secrets. Yet, for the first time in 2 years, a spark of understanding flickered in the darkness. The road ahead would be treacherous, but Amaka knew one thing with absolute clarity. She would walk it beside him, hand in hand. Late afternoon light slanted through the stained glass windows of Chuma's private chapel, painting kaleidoscopic patterns on the stone floor. Rows of wooden pews lay empty, save for Amaka slipping quietly between them. She had followed Chuma here, drawn by whispers of a vow he refused to share. At the altar, Chuma knelt before a marble statue of his late sister, hands clasped tightly. His head bowed. He murmured words she could not catch, but each syllable carried the weight of anguish. Amaka's heart thudded. She stepped forward, voice trembling. Chuma? He froze, knuckles whitening around each other, then slowly rose. Candle flames flickered, casting his face in half shadow. Amaka, he said, voice low. You shouldn't be here. She crossed the aisle, palms open. I have to understand. This silence, this vow, what does it mean? He swallowed, gaze flicking to the floor. Ifyananya believed she could protect this family from ruin. Before she died, she made me promise never to speak of her passing, and never to love again until the debt was repaid. His voice cracked. I thought I could honor her, but every day I feel her judgment in my chest. Amaka's eyes brimmed. Judgment? Or guilt? Chuma, you loved me enough to marry me. Why keep me at arm's length? He ran a hand through his hair. Because I feared that any touch, any word of love would betray her memory. I thought silence was the only way to keep her happy. She stepped closer. Her peace cannot depend on your pain. Let me help you carry this burden. He looked at her, vulnerability raw. I don't know how. She reached out, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. By forgiving yourself. In that silent chapel, Amaka became a beacon of light against Chuma's unspoken curse. Though the path ahead remained shrouded in grief, a crack had formed in his armor of silence, and she vowed to widen it with love. That night, the manor lay wrapped in hush. Amaka crept down the marble staircase to Chuma's study, determined to see if progress had been made. The heavy door stood slightly ajar. Warm lamplight spilled out. Inside, Chuma sat at his desk, phone pressed to his ear. His tone was urgent, strained. We have to move faster. The board will realize if we miss the deadline. He paused. No, I don't care about the optics. Just get it done. Amaka's breath caught as his voice broke. Please, I can't lose everything now. A sob followed, muffled by the phone. She ripped the door open. He jerked upright, pale and shaken. "Amaka!" Tears welled in her eyes. "Who are you calling?" He swallowed, closing the call. "Inspector Nwankwo." Her brow furrowed. Why involve the police in a board meeting? He rose, moving around the desk as if to hide something. There's been a leak. Sensitive documents. Someone's plotting to overthrow me." His shoulders trembled. "I'm terrified, Amaka. I can't face another betrayal." She closed the distance between them. "You don't have to face it alone." He looked at her, voice softening. "I'm sorry I ran to Nkiru instead of you." Amaka placed a hand on his arm. "You ran because you thought you had no one else. But I'm here." He exhaled, relief mixing with shame. "I don't want to break my vow again." She touched his cheek. "Then make a new vow to trust me." Under the glow of amber lamplight, his walls cracked further. His confession at midnight was not a weakness, but a bridge to the connection he craved. The next morning, Amaka found an email from Obinna waiting in her inbox. Urgent, confidential merger proposal. Her pulse spiked as she clicked it open. The message detailed a clandestine partnership with a rival conglomerate, terms that would hand control of E's technologies to interests hostile to her family. She marched to Obinna's office. Outside, the marble corridor echoed with her heels. She paused at his door and knocked firmly. "Come in," came his smooth voice. Amaka entered. Obinna sat behind his mahogany desk, steepling his fingers. Sunlight from the floor-to-ceiling windows rimmed him in gold. "I gather you've read the proposal." She crossed her arms. "Why are you doing this?" He leaned back, expression cool. "Pressure from investors. Chuma's indecision cost us leverage. We need this merger to survive." Her eyes narrowed. "At the expense of your own CEO's family legacy?" He stood, advancing. "Family loyalty is a luxury in business, Mrs. Ease. Don't confuse sentiment with strategy." Amaka bristled. "I won't let you sell my marriage, or my husband's company, out from under us." Obinna's lips curved in a thin smile. "Then convince him to drop this childish vow." He tapped a folder on his desk. "Here are the financials showing the merger's benefits." She picked up the folder, flipping through glossy charts. Yet each page read like a poison. "You'd betray everyone for profit." He shrugged. "That's business." She met his gaze. "I'm not going to let you win." Leaving him in the shafts of light, Amaka realized Obinna's ambition cast long shadows. Shadows that threatened to swallow Chuma's fragile progress. But she vowed to be the light that shattered them. That evening, Amaka returned to her mother's home, clutching Obinna's proposal. Mama Udoka stirred a pot of jollof rice on the stove. Aroma of tomatoes and scotch bonnet filled the kitchen. "Mama, he's going to merge us out of existence," Amaka burst out, dumping the folder on the table. Mama's eyebrows rose, her spoon pausing mid-stir. Amaka sank into a chair. "Obinna has a backdoor plan to betray Chuma. We can't compete with that kind of power." Mama nodded, calm as ever. "Then we need a pact." Amaka blinked. "A pact?" Mama scooped a spoonful onto Amaka's plate. "You once saved Ifyananya's life, yes?" Amaka's fork froze. I don't understand." Mama set down the spoon. 20 years ago, you were a child playing near the river. Ifyananya slipped, and you pulled her from the water. She never forgot that." Amaka's voice trembled. "I had no idea." Mama's eyes glistened. "You unknowingly repaid her debt. Now she smiles upon your marriage. But Obinna's betrayal will bring her sorrow and yours." Amaka pressed her hand to her chest. "What do we do?" Mama rose and took Amaka's hands. "We forge our own vow. You and Chuma, a pact of love and strategy. You will stand together, heart and mind, to outmaneuver Obinna and protect the legacy she died for." Amaka felt warmth flood through her. I'm ready. Mama smiled. Then promise me and promise Ifyananya that your unity will be stronger than any curse. That night, under the starlit sky, Amaka whispered her vow to the ancestors and felt their blessing in the rustle of palm fronds outside her window. At dawn, Amaka waited in Chuma's study, heart pounding. When he entered, he paused at the threshold, surprised. She rose, extending her hand. "Shall we make that pact?" she asked softly. He stepped forward slowly, eyes searching hers. I'd like that." His voice cracked. She placed her hand in his. A bolt of warmth shot through both of them, a jolt neither had felt in 2 years. They stared at their joined hands, awed. "Promise me," Amaka whispered, "that this touch is only the first of many." Chuma closed his eyes, breathing in the scent of her hair. "I promise." He lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss to her knuckles, an intimate gesture loaded with meaning. In that simple act, all barriers between them fell away. His vow of silence shattered, replaced by one of devotion. They sank onto the leather couch by the window, city lights still glowing in the pre-dawn gloom. Chuma took a deep breath. "Tell me everything you know about Obina's merger." Amaka smiled, leaning against him. "First, we gather evidence. Then we expose him." He nodded, determination flaring in his gaze. Together. Outside, the first rays of sunlight crowned E's manor. 2 hearts, once coldly silent, beat in unison at last, ready to claim their future. Moonlight draped the terrace of E's manor in silver, turning the trailing bougainvillea vines into ghostly tendrils against the night sky. Amaka stepped onto the flagstones, her silk gown whispering with each breath of wind. Moments ago, they had shared dinner under the crystal chandelier, and for the first time in weeks, Chuma had spoken freely, laughter mingling with the clink of champagne flutes. Yet beneath his smile lingered the weight of unspoken vows. Now he emerged from the open doors, hair tousled and eyes shadowed with emotion. He paused when he saw her, as if marveling at her courage. "Amaka!" he began, but stopped, searching for the right words under the moon's scrutiny. She crossed the terrace, heart pounding. "I'm tired of secrets," she said softly. "Every time I see you, I feel the walls closing in. I need to know you, every part of you, before I can truly love you." His shoulders sagged. "I want that too," he admitted, voice husky. "But I'm afraid." She reached for his hand, cool against his palm. "Afraid of what?" He closed his eyes, inhaling the jasmine-scented air. Of betraying Ifyananya. The name hovered between them like a sacred invocation. I promised her I'd remain silent, never open my heart again, until her memory was honored. Amaka's gaze softened. "And is honoring her memory worth losing us?" He looked at her then, really looked, eyes gleaming with unshed tears. No, his breath hitched. I can't breathe without you." She stepped closer. "Then breathe with me." Under the veil of night, he cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheek. Their lips met in a kiss both tender and fierce, an echo of all the silences that had come before. Amaka's arms wound around his neck as Chuma's hands traced the contours of her waist, as if memorizing her form for the very first time. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I claim you," he whispered. "All of you. Tonight I break my vow." Her pulse thundered. "Claim me," she breathed. He led her to the wrought iron bench at the terrace's edge. Moonlight danced on her hair as she sat, and he knelt before her, lifting her hand. "I vow to speak truth," he promised, voice steady, "to share my heart, to build our life with honesty." Amaka's eyes shone. "And I vow to stand by you, no matter what darkness we find." They sealed their promises with another kiss, longer, deeper, until the world melted away and only their shared heartbeat remained. Yet, even as they embraced, a lonely owl called in the distance, an omen that secrets yet lurked in shadow. Unseen by them, a small black envelope fluttered from Chuma's jacket pocket, drifting into the manicured hydrangeas below. Dawn broke in a wash of pink and gold as Amaka crept through the corridors of Ease Technologies headquarters. She wore a simple black sheath dress and carried a leather briefcase. Inside, the tools she and Chuma would need to expose Obina's treachery. They met in the executive elevator, eyes alight with shared purpose. Chuma pressed the button for the 15th floor, Obina's domain. "You sure about this?" he whispered, voice taut. Amaka nodded. "We have to find the proof." The doors opened onto a hushed hallway lined with glass offices. They slipped past startled receptionists and security cameras, making for the door marked Chief Financial Officer. Chuma's keycard hung heavy in his hand. He swiped it with trembling fingers. Inside, the office was immaculate. Ebony desk, wall-to-wall monitors, and a vault-like safe tucked behind mahogany credenza. Obina's chair sat empty, but Amaka felt his presence in every polished surface. Chuma approached the credenza, sliding it aside to reveal the safe's dial. "I remember the combination," he said, voice low. "Your mother taught it to me as a child." His thumb spun the numbers with deft precision. The safe clicked open. Inside lay 3 leather-bound ledgers, each stamped confidential. Amaka's breath caught as she gingerly lifted the top volume. Its pages were filled with column after column of coded entries. Company accounts, shell corporations, payments traced to offshore accounts, and in the margins, names of government officials and business partners. She painstakingly photographed each incriminating page with her phone while Chuma stood guard at the door. When she slipped the ledger into her briefcase, the office lights flicked on. Obina stood in the doorway, arms folded, expression unreadable. "I wondered when you two would come snooping." Chuma straightened, stepping in front of Amaka. "We're done hiding." Obina smiled a slow, dangerous smile. "You don't know what you're playing with." He advanced, voice rising. "Those pages have the power to destroy more than me. They'll take down our entire empire, including your precious family legacy." Amaka slammed the briefcase shut and met his gaze. "Empires built on lies deserve to fall." Obina's eyes flicked to the safe. "You'll regret this." He turned and walked away, clicking the door shut behind him. Chuma exhaled, voice heavy. "We've got it." Amaka nodded, heart racing. "Now we bring in Akiru." As they slipped out of the office, the morning sun glinted on the glass facade, casting long shadows that would soon expose Obina's darkest dealings to daylight. By mid-morning, the air around Ease Technologies crackled with tension. Word spread of an urgent police presence, and clusters of employees gathered at water coolers, whispering rumors. In the lobby, Inspector Nkiru Nwankwo arrived flanked by uniformed officers. Her trench coat billowed in the breeze as she flashed her badge at security. "Clear the floor," she ordered. On the 15th floor, Obina's door burst open. Inspector Nwankwo strode in, badge held high. "Obina Okoye, you're under arrest for embezzlement, bribery, and conspiracy to defraud your company." Obina rose from behind his desk, slick as ever. "On what evidence?" he asked, voice calm. The inspector produced a tablet. "These entries, payments to shell accounts, bribes to officials." She tapped the screen, cycling through the photos Amaka had taken. "Your ledger." Employees pressed against the glass walls, jaws dropping. Obina's face flushed. "This is fabricated," he shouted. "I demand a lawyer." The inspector's gaze was steely. "Your lawyer can meet you at the station. You have the right to remain silent." 2 officers approached and placed handcuffs on his wrists. Chuma and Amaka stood in the corridor, watching through the open door. Amaka reached for Chuma's hand. "It's over," she whispered. He exhaled, relief and sorrow warring in his eyes. "It feels like the end of an era." Suddenly, Obina's chief of staff, a pale young woman, rushed in wailing. "Please, Inspector, there must be some mistake." The inspector shook her head. "Not today." She escorted Obinna out, past stunned onlookers. Cameras clicked as news of the arrest spread. When the hallway fell silent, Amaka turned to Chuma. "You did it." He touched her cheek. "We did it." Then his expression darkened. "But this is just the beginning." Amaka frowned. "What do you mean?" He glanced toward Obinna's empty office. He was just one cog. "My mother, she signed off on these deals." Amaka's eyes widened. "Your mother?" Chuma nodded grimly. "There's one more betrayal to expose." Late afternoon found Chuma standing at the wrought iron gates of his family's ancestral estate. Ivy climbed the stone walls, and distant laughter drifted from guests attending a garden party inside. Today's festivities felt cruelly out of step with the turmoil in his chest. Amaka fell into step beside him, hand at his elbow. "You don't have to face her alone," she said. He nodded, voice tight. "I do." They entered the courtyard and made their way to the guest house, a small, white-painted villa where his mother was entertaining dignitaries over tea. Through the arched windows, they saw her laughing, a perfect portrait of grace. Chuma pushed open the door. Conversations hushed. His mother, Mrs. Ease, turned porcelain teacup in hand. Her eyes locked on her son, then softened. "Chukwuma," she said, voice warm. "To what do I owe this pleasure?" He took a breath. "Mother, I need to know why you approved Obinna's deals." Her expression flickered. Regret, then resolve. She set down her cup. "Sit," she said, gesturing to a pair of chairs. Amaka took one. Chuma remained standing. "When your father died," Mrs. Ease began, voice steady, "I was left to run our empire. Investors were circling like vultures. Obinna presented a lifeline, one I believed would secure our future." Chuma's jaw tightened. "But you didn't consider the cost. You gambled on bribes and shell companies." She closed her eyes, swallowing. "I did. I hated myself for it. But the board would have ousted me, sold the company, and stripped away everything your father built." Amaka stood. There were other ways. Mrs. Ease looked at her daughter-in-law with both admiration and sorrow. "You're right. I was scared of losing it all. But my fear blinded me to the blood oaths I made." She reached out, touching Chuma's hand. "Your sister," she warned me, but I silenced her voice. Chuma knelt beside her, voice trembling. "You silenced her, mother, and you silenced me." Tears blurred Mrs. Ease's eyes. "I will spend my life making amends." They sat in the fading light, mother and son bound by guilt and love. Amaka placed her hand on Chuma's shoulder. "Together, we'll break these oaths." Mrs. Ease nodded, determined. No more secrets. As they rose, the last golden rays of sun slipped behind the hills, an end to old betrayals and the promise of a new dawn. Before first light, Amaka and Chuma assembled a small contingent of loyal employees, Mama Udoka and Inspector Nkiru at the gates of the family mansion. The grounds lay silent save for the distant crow of a rooster. Chuma raised his hand. "Today we end corruption in this family and begin justice for those hurt by Obinna's crimes." Amaka unfolded a thick dossier. Ledger pages, witness affidavits, and restitution plans for families defrauded by Obinna's schemes. "We will donate 25% of profits to them," she announced. From behind them emerged Mrs. Ease, dressed in a simple linen dress that spoke of humility. She joined them by the gate. "I stand with you," she said, voice strong in the dawn. "Let this be the first of many reparations." They walked across dew-kissed lawns to the main doors, flanked by reporters and curious staff. Inside the great hall, the board of directors, rosy-cheeked from last night's celebration, rose as the family entered. Chuma stepped forward, voice echoing against marble columns. "Gentlemen, members of the board, effective immediately, our CFO is dismissed, and this board is dissolved. A new council will be seated, one built on transparency and integrity. Shock rippled through the room. Obina's allies sputtered. One older director protested, "You can't do that!" Chuma held up the ledger. "These are the crimes you enabled." He laid the documents on the long oak table. "Our empire will survive only if built on trust, not bribery." Amaka added, "We will hold public forums, release annual reports, and ensure every citizen sees the truth." A murmur of approval rose. Inspector Nwankwo stepped forward. "The police will oversee the transition. Anyone found complicit will face charges." As sunlight streamed through stained glass, illuminating dust motes like motes of hope, Mrs. Ease placed a hand on Chuma's shoulder. "Your sister would be proud," she whispered. Chuma inhaled deeply. "Today we claim our legacy for real." Outside the great windows, villagers and journalists applauded, banners reading "Justice at Ease Manor" fluttering in the breeze. The first chapter of their new reign had begun, a reign forged in restitution, love, and the promise that every heart, once broken, could be healed. Rain pattered against the newsroom windows of the Lego Sentinel as Amaka and Chuma entered, escorted by Inspector Nwankwo. Under the harsh glow of fluorescent lights, stacks of paper and half-empty coffee mugs testified to the late-night grind of investigative journalism. A tall woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense bob looked up from her cluttered desk, surprise flickering across her face. "This is Chakuma Ease?" she asked, voice steady but inquisitive. He nodded. "I'm Thelma Okoro," she introduced herself. "You don't know me, but I've been digging into Obina's network for months. I have documents you won't find in those ledgers." She slid a slim USB drive across the desk. Encrypted emails, proof of collusion with government insiders, timelines, even voice recordings. Amaka's breath caught. "How did you get this?" Thelma smiled dryly. "A friend at the Ministry of Finance wanted to see the truth exposed. She risked her career for it." She stood, crossing to Chuma. "Your sister's death triggered a chain of cover-ups. I've mapped every lie and every payment." Inspector Nwankwo stepped forward. "This will seal the case." Chuma lifted the USB, determination flashing in his eyes. "Thank you, all of you." He turned to Amaka, voice soft. "With Thelma's evidence, we can build a fortress of truth." Amaka touched his arm. "We're not just demolishing enemies, we're forging allies." Outside, thunder rumbled, as though echoing the gathering storm of justice they would unleash together. The glass-walled boardroom of Ease Technologies filled with anxious murmurs as shareholders in silk ties and designer gowns filed in. A polished oak table dominated the space, and at its head sat Obina's successor, an uncomfortable placeholder. Amaka and Chuma entered with Thelma and Inspector Nwankwo in tow. Cameras from inside and out captured every moment. Chuma rose to address the assembly. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for convening on such short notice. Today we reveal evidence that will determine the future of this company." He handed Thelma the USB. She connected it to the central screen. First came email chains showing backdoor deals, then voice recordings of Obina promising bribes to ministers. Finally, ledger cross-references tying board members to shell corporations. Gasps rippled around the table. One elderly director banged his fist. "This is treachery." Inspector Nwankwo stood. "Those complicit will be prosecuted. You have no immunity under the law." Amaka rose, voice firm. "As majority stakeholder, I propose an immediate vote. Dissolve the current board and replace it with a committee of transparency, third-party auditors, employee representatives, and community leaders." Murmurs turned to nods. Votes were cast, hands raised, paper signed. The motion passed unanimously. The placeholder board chair sank into his seat, defeated. Chuma sat beside Amaka, exhaling relief. they had won not through force, but with incontrovertible truth. Late that night, Chuma stood alone on the terrace where he and Amaka had first embraced. City lights glittered below, but his gaze was inward, haunted by the ghosts of his past promises. His mother's confessions, Obina's betrayal, his own vow of silence, each revelation had shattered a piece of his carefully constructed world. Amaka joined him, wrapping a cashmere shawl around his shoulders. "You look like you've seen a ghost." He managed a wan smile. "I feel like one. Every illusion I held, of family loyalty, of love protected by secrets, crumbled." She took his hand, warm against his jacket. "You're not a ghost, Chuma. You're a man who learned that silence and deceit only bind us to pain." He turned to her, voice strained. "I betrayed Ifinanya's memory by hiding truths. I betrayed you by keeping that curse alive." Amaka's eyes glistened. "You honored her by uncovering the lies, and you honored our marriage by breaking your silence." He drew her close. "Thank you for forgiving me." She placed a gentle kiss on his temple. "I forgive you, but on one condition. We live in the light from now on. No more secrets." He pressed his forehead to hers. "I promise." In that moment, the last shards of illusion dissolved, replaced by a clear vision of their shared future, unfettered and true. Spring's first blossoms crowned the estate gardens as Amaka and Chuma hosted a small vow renewal ceremony under a jasmine-arched pergola. Close friends, family, and even former board members gathered on white chairs. Mama Yudoka officiated, her eyes shining with pride. "Chakuma," she intoned, voice warm. "You have learned that love must speak to the heart, not silence it." Chuma faced Amaka, smile radiant. "Amaka ease. 2 years ago, I bound myself by silence. Today, I vow to speak my love each day, to share every secret, to build our lives on honesty." Amaka's gaze was unwavering. "Chakuma, I vow to stand beside you through triumphs and trials, to listen when you speak, to hold you when words fail, and to cherish the trust we rebuild today." They exchanged rings carved with their wedding date and an infinity symbol, a promise unbroken. As they kissed, petals drifted down like confetti. Among the onlookers, Thelma and Inspector Nwankwo exchanged knowing smiles. Justice had given birth to this new chapter of love. Later, under lantern-lit tables, Amaka whispered in Chuma's ear, "I never believed love could feel so free." He whispered back, "Neither did I, until I learned to speak my truth." Dawn ushered in a crisp parade of light across Ease Manor's rose gardens. Amaka and Chuma walked hand in hand, footprints tracing a path through dew-kissed grass. Inspector Nwankwo waved from the driveway as patrol cars rolled away, Obina's final transport to the courthouse. Chuma paused beneath the old oak where he once stood silent on his wedding night. He traced the bark with one hand, then turned to Amaka. "This tree saw my vow of silence and now witnesses my vow of love." Amaka smiled, arms entwining his waist. 2 years of cold silence are over. He lifted her chin, eyes bright. "And one final, passionate embrace claims our hearts forever." They shared a kiss deep with promise. No shadow of doubt, no echo of past curses. The manor doors opened behind them, and Mama Yudoka appeared, holding a basket of wildflowers. "Claim your day," she said softly, tossing petals at their feet. Amaka laughed, sweeping a handful into the air. "Our future is ours." Chuma bent to pick a bloom and tucked it behind Amaka's ear. "And it's bright." As the sun climbed, they walked together toward the gate, 2 hearts finally unbound, stepping into a world they had reclaimed with love, truth, and courage. The end.